Today, I will be reviewing the movie Dead and Buried. It's a movie based on a story by Jeff Miller and Alex Stern. The screenplay was written by Ronald Chaussett and Dan O'Bannon, both of which are better known for working on a small and obscure movie some of you might have heard of, Alien. That's right! This movie is from the duo who came up with the story behind Alien. Not only did they write the story for Alien, but they later went on to work on another quite well-known movie. Can you guess which one? No? I'll give you a clue. He was in it. Still no clue? What if I say Martian woman with 3 tits? Yeah, it was Total Recall. Oh, wrong movie, sorry. I mean this Total Recall. I read that, and my expectations went through the roof. Growing up in the 80s, Alien and Total Recall were the pinnacle of sci-fi movies. I mean, this movie can only be good, right? Now, to be fair, O'Bannon did say that he had no part in the writing of the movie. Apparently, Chaussett wrote the whole movie but needed O'Bannon's name for the project. Then, when it comes to special effects, we have people like James Cagle. At that point, it was only the second time he was credited for his work as sculptor, but he went on to work on films such as Big Trouble in Little China, Child's Play, Jumanji, Independence Day, and the 2002 version of Spider-Man. Not too shabby, huh? The special effects were designed by Stan Winston. We're talking about someone who worked on famous movies, including most of the Terminator movies, Aliens, Darkness Falls, Monster Squad, and Iron Man. The movie was directed by Gary Sherman, who went on to direct and produce Poltergeist 3, and who became an executive producer on Poltergeist: The Legacy. I would also like to draw your attention to one member of the cast whose name will sound familiar to many horror fans. Robert Englund. That's right, Freddy Krueger. He only has a minor role, but it is fun to see him before he took on the role of his iconic character 3 years after the release of this movie. The film starts with this guy getting out of a van and taking pictures. Out of nowhere, this girl shows up and starts flirting with him big time. He's trying to play it cool. It's like he's trying to give this, oh yeah, girls are hitting on me all the time vibe. But it doesn't take long before she starts posing for him. He even mentions selling the pictures to Playboy.
Great, that's wonderful. I'm going to put this in Playboy.
I'd also like to mention something funny. Remember England's most famous role, Freddy? Guess how they're calling this guy.
Freddy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, that's not his real name, but it doesn't really matter because not long after, the girl flashes her tits, and then a crowd of people start attacking the guy. Then, they tie him up to a pole and set him on fire. Talk about overkill there. The sheriff shows up. He's played by James Ferrantino. Then, the mortician slash coroner of the town arrives. He's very chill, he's listening to his music. It's so odd that the other characters even mention it.
Talk about an entrance.
The mortician is played by Jack Albertson, who sadly passed away not long after the release of this movie. This was Albertson's last theatrical film. He did shoot 2 other made-for-TV movies after, but still. He died of cancer a few months after the release of this movie. He was at least able to attend the premiere of the film, though. The thing that makes his performance in this movie even more magnificent is the fact that he was fighting cancer as he was shooting the movie. That's what you call dedication. Let me tell you, he really shines in this role. I don't think the movie would be half as good without him. We can really see the passion that his character has for his profession.
Officer, this is child's play. I've replaced missing eyeballs with sawdust and glued the lids together. I've used bent aluminum combs for dentures. I've used the back part of the scalp when there was no front part. And I folded one hand over wadded up newspapers when the other hand had no fingers. You find all this obscene, Sheriff? Do you know what is really obscene? Look at this. Look at the work I've done. This is an art, and I am the artist.
This guy loves his job so much that he even dances while getting ready to work on the corpse. So then, when the mortician looks inside the car, it turns out the guy's not dead yet. Then, we get a quick introduction to the characters. Robert Englund explains that the sheriff actually left town to get a degree in criminology, and despite having many better offers, he decided to come back to his hometown to help. Isn't that the definition of a good guy? So, we don't yet have a murder, but it doesn't take long for the killers to strike again. This time, the victim is a drunk.
Goodbye, old friend.
Okay, he's giving alcohol to a dead fish. Talk about drunk. After this horrible scene, we return to the mortician looking way too happy. This high school kid interrupts him to say that the sheriff wants to talk to him. I really like the part where the mortician talks about the kid's secret stash of weed.
I'll never tell him you keep it in the reposing room, under a stiff.
Then, the sheriff and the mortician talk for a bit. The sheriff suspects that the burning car was staged, which is not really something new to us, but really shows that he's smart. They get interrupted by the phone. It seems someone found the body of the drunk. The sheriff finds out where the burnt guy was staying. And look how shady this guy looks.
No. Now, wait a minute. There was a guy checked in here yesterday. Said he's going to be here a couple of days. Now, he hadn't checked out, and I haven't seen him nor his car since. But I noticed this morning his suitcase is still here.
The sheriff learns that the burnt guy knew his wife. And again with that guy. If that's not suspicious, I don't know what is. We meet the sheriff's wife, and she does look suspicious. I also like how they let you know who this guy is.
Is it possible this is a transaction you didn't know about, sir?
I know everything that's done at the school. I am the principal.
The sheriff visits the burnt guy at the hospital. While he's there, a nurse shows up and kills the guy. Wait, I just realized that Robert Englund is in the movie where a guy named Freddy dies after getting burnt to a crisp. Sounds familiar? So, the wife asked the sheriff to drop off this film that was supposedly made by her students. Yeah, right. This is where the movie starts to get really weird. Oh, you heard me. If you thought it was weird before, brace yourselves. We see this family stopping at the diner to ask their way, and we discover that Freddy is alive after all.
Hey, Freddie, can you sell these folks some gas?
Sure thing. It's just down the street.
Robert Englund is in this scene. So, we have Robert Englund in the same scene as a guy named Freddy who died in the fire and is back from the dead. I mean, wow. You think that's where Wes Craven got his inspiration? You can tell it was different back then because no one in the car is wearing a seatbelt. Clearly, it would have been smart to at least buckle up their kid. But anyway. as you expect, they've been led into a trap. And you know that stereotype where the killer never runs in a horror film? Well, this time, none of the killers run. I mean, you've laid a trap, and you won't even try to stop them from reaching their car? If things weren't weird enough already, the sheriff hits this guy. And while the sheriff checks on the guy, we can see the guy's severed arm on the sheriff's bumper. And the arm moves by itself. What the fuck? Later, the sheriff comes home. He finds a book about witchcraft and a knife in a drawer. His wife says it's for her class. What the fuck subject to talk about in class? Nowadays you can't even say Merry Christmas and she's teaching kids about witchcraft? So, we thought the family got away, but we learned that they found their car, but no corpse. That suspicious guy from earlier tells the sheriff that the burnt guy is alive. Later, we get to see his wife talk to kids about voodoo and zombies. There's even this very disturbing part.
Really creepy part. Okay? In order for the master to retain the control over the souls of his undead, he had to cut out their heart and keep it hidden.
So, we have a hitchhiker getting in the car, and we all know where this is heading, which makes this line hilarious.
Some big city full of killers and buggers, you know?
Yeah.
Then, she gets killed. Once again, the killers go quite the distance to make sure she's dead. Then comes the most truly fascinating scene in this movie. The mortician reconstructs the hitchhiker's face completely. Truly fascinating to see. This guy is really a magician. See how flexible her skin is? That is not a wax figure. Then, someone walks to the body and it comes back to life. The sheriff takes samples of his damaged bumper and sends them to the lab for analysis. He learns that the cells have been dead for months.
Look, if you don't believe me, send it upstate somewhere. But I'm telling you that these bits of flesh have been dead at least 3 or 4 months.
Then we get our next murder scene. So, the mortician visits the sheriff to report the theft of a body. During their conversation, the sheriff learns that his wife and the mortician are very close. And we get this nice little line.
Certainly not. And you can tell her I was more than mildly insulted. Just because I'm a mortician, she had the audacity to insinuate that I might have knowledge of the black arts.
We also see that high school student from earlier painting himself with a product clearly not meant for living people. Not weird at all. The sheriff exhumes the body, and it turns out the casket contains only a human heart. Now he knows something's off. So he tries to find out more about the mortician. After that, he picks up the film, and we get to see the shopkeeper's decaying hand. At that point, the sheriff suspects zombies.
Any way whatsoever to reanimate people after they have died?
I mean, this guy is a smart cookie. Not like characters in the movie Quarantine, where everyone seems to deliberately avoid thinking of zombies. But that's for another time. He learns about the mortician's past. It seems he has performed experiments on bodies. After learning that, the sheriff returns home to watch the film he picked up. He sees this kind of snuff film where a woman is having sex with a man whose face we can't see. Then, she plunges a knife in his back, and villagers come out of nowhere. And that's when he finds out that the woman is no other than his wife. And that the mortician is there too. The sheriff confronts the mortician and discovers that he's the one responsible for everything. We can truly see how twisted his mind is in that scene. But there's a twist there. He's not evil. He's not doing it for the power or because of some horrible plot. No, he simply wants to preserve these people.
They had to be disfigured. Don't you see? I have to make them look like they used to look.
Then, we learn that the sheriff's wife is also a zombie. Not long after, who do we see? His wife. And she won't shut up.
Why fixing it yourself? But I'll fix it for you.
She's
You'll have
dead.
a choice between minute steak.
Baby, please die.
She's dead.
Also, you have pork chops or beef stroganoff, the last of which I must warn you comes out of the pack.
The wife flees and the sheriff shoots the mortician. The sheriff then runs after his wife, only to find her in the tomb he had exhumed earlier. And I guess she's tired of living?
I love you, Dad.
Meanwhile, the mortician survived and proceeds to turn himself into a zombie. Once the wife is buried,
May she rest in
all
peace,
the other
Dan.
zombies show up. We see everyone we've met throughout the movie. The sheriff freaks out and returns to where he shot the mortician, only to find him alive. That's also when we get the final
There's
twist.
one more thing you should know, Dan.
He's also a zombie. Then, we finish with the line that comes further blurring the lines between good and evil.
Come, Dan. Let me fix those for you.
So, overall, I find it is a very entertaining film. I wasn't sure if it would still be interesting the second time around, but I noticed a lot more details the second time, so I would say it is still pretty interesting. The plot really feels like we're watching an episode of The Twilight Zone. It's also a paranoid's nightmare. We don't know who to trust, and it turns out we can't trust anyone. This movie also blurs the line between good and evil. The mortician sees himself as a hero. In his mind, he's only protecting the people he turns into zombies. He treats them like his children. However, by having any visitors in the town killed, and by giving himself reason to do a full reconstruction on the bodies, like having a girl's face smashed in, he really exhibits some kind of god complex. One thing that I really like is that he never tried to explain how the mortician creates his zombies. He even says so himself.
How do you do it? Call it black magic. Call it a medical breakthrough. I'll take my secret to the grave.
I've read that the director was very careful to avoid the color red in the shooting of the movie, so that the sight of blood would be even more shocking. It's true that each dead scene is really shocking and is in stark contrast to the rest of the movie. The ending really reminds me of the movie Sixth Sense, with the main character being the only one not knowing he's been dead all along. So, in conclusion, I would say this movie is definitely worth it, but be careful, it might make you paranoid.